Well, welcome to the third of 7 videos looking at specific project management lifecycle models. And what we're going to do during this particular video is first explore what Agile projects are, and then we're going to look at the iterative model and 6 different approaches to implementing the iterative model. So let's start off with Agile and look at that. So Agile project management is going to be an approach that's used to manage projects where the goal is clearly known, but the solution ranges from partially unknown, where you use the iterative approach, to almost totally unknown, where you use the adaptive approach. For both the iterative and the adaptive approach, you're going to have a single scope phase followed by a series of plan, launch, monitor, and close, and then another iteration where you loop back around and do it again. And in the 6 different approaches, you'll use different words than iteration, but it's really the same thing. You're looping back around, you're trying to create opportunities for significant client involvement, and you're trying to create opportunities for learning by the client and by the project team as you try to develop a solution to the problem. As you're implementing these, you're going to be having fully supported production versions of partial solutions released to the end user quarterly or semi-annually. You'll have intermediate versions released every 2 to 4 weeks. And again, what this is creating is this constant flow of value, of business value. And learning by a large group of folks trying to work on this particular project, be it, and it's an extended group. The project team itself is actually small, typically 15, 25 or less. That team's going to be co-located, should be very skilled generalists because they're taking a broad perspective, looking at all of the possible solutions to a problem, and then trying to pursue the ones that appear to be most viable. All right, the Agile Manifesto, released 2001, a couple of different ways of looking at this, but very different than what you see in traditional project management. And if you go back and look at projects, you'll see that about 70% of them are actually falling into the Agile camp, where the solution is not completely known. So it's trying to align with this large pocket of projects that need to be done. As we look at the iterative project management lifecycle model, it's going to be a number of phases that were repeated in groups with feedback after each loop. So the client is in control. You've got these iterations that allow for learning, and you're going to continue to work until one of 3 cases occur. The client decides that the solution has been reached, the client decides to abandon the approach, or you run out of money and time that was allocated to the specific project. You want to use this project when most, but not all, of the solution is clearly known, okay? If most of the solution is clearly not known, then you're going to use the adaptive approach, all right? And so that's kind of your trade-off there. If you think you're going to have a large number of scope changes, again, that may lean towards using an adaptive approach, or if you believe that the client is only going to be modestly involved, not strongly involved, you may lean towards a iterative approach as opposed to an adaptive. Those really are the kind of 3 decision criteria you're going to use to choose between the 2 different types of models. Here are the characteristics associated with the iterative project management lifecycle model. So again, we've talked about this. The solution is known, but not to the depth that you need to solve the problem. The client can review partial solutions and will be involved in the project. Scope changes are going to be part of the iterations, and you can incorporate those in, so learning can take place, adaptation can take place, and you can adapt it to the business conditions that you're operating in. That does have some weaknesses. It does require more active involvement by the client. It does require co-located and skilled teams. Certain problems do not lend themselves to intermediate solutions, and so you can have some challenges there. And you really can't specify the final solution at the start of the project. If you could, then of course it would be a traditional project, and you would be using a different model completely. All right, so let's look at now the different phases. So during that scope and plan phase, you're going to come in, you're going to the extent possible, work through what you do know about the solution, try to make sure that you have that documented before moving forward. And then in the planning build for that known solution, and then a partial plan for high priority functions that you're going to try to accomplish during that iteration. And remember, you're going to come back to this plan phase multiple times during different iterations. So here are the 6 different approaches. You have a prototyping model, a evolutionary development waterfall model, a rationalized unified process model, dynamic systems development model, adaptive software development model, and Scrum. Now, there are real differences between all of these different approaches, but for the purposes of this class, the real thing that I want you to get out of is how an iterative model works, and this idea of running through iterations. There are different variances within these, but they do share common characteristics. So let's look at prototyping. So we're going to start with an idea being proposed. We gather those requirements, plan a prototype, develop it, deliver it, get feedback, and then start working on the next prototype. And you just keep on working through prototypes until the client makes a decision to either abandon the project or that the project has been successful and you've got a final solution. And again, certain types of problems lend themselves, especially if they're visual, to this prototyping approach. Evolutionary development waterfall model is similar. You're starting with a problem or an opportunity, doing the gatherment of requirements to a high-level design, and then from there you start building versions, getting customer feedback on those versions, incorporating them in, and then finally delivering a final version. So again, some similarities between the prototype and the evolutionary development waterfall model. When we go to rationalized unified process, you've got this idea of gathering requirements, designing, coding, integrating, implementing, and then looping back to the iteration. But another idea associated with rational unified model is this idea of building templates and tools so that you can use code and other components from other projects. Now, you don't realize this during your first project, but you do. That library of templates starts to pay off as you get into doing 4, 5, 6 projects. You can start to pull from that material. Dynamic system development method, again, pretty similar. You've got this idea generation, feasibility study, followed by business study, functional model iteration, and design it, then implement it, and then you jump back to any of those previous phases as necessary to make the appropriate changes for moving the project forward. Here's some principles associated with it. Again, you're going to see active client involvement. It's going to be absolutely imperative in terms of making decisions. That team has to be able to make decisions. You've got a real focus on frequent delivery of product, but you see that in the other models as well. Again, this is not something that's going to stretch out over 6 months or a year before you see value. The intent is to rapidly deploy value. These types of approaches lend themselves towards converging on an acceptable business solution, but that doesn't always happen. Sometimes you diverge from the acceptable business solution, and those are projects you're going to have to abandon. All right, so let's look at 1 or 2 more. Adaptive software development, kind of very similar project initiation. You have an adaptive cycle where you plan and speculate. You then have a collaborate where you're engineering a solution, learn some more, do a quality review, and you keep looping back as necessary to that plan cycle again before releasing the final product. All right, and then a Scrum, same thing, and Scrum is taken from rugby, and it's this idea of we're all getting in there, we're all going to work towards a prioritized list of functionality, do sprints, and during those sprints we're knocking out as much of that functionality as we can, we demo that functionality, and then we loop back to prioritize yet again another set of deliveries, again on shortened timelines. You're talking 2 weeks, 4 weeks, a quarter to roll out different solutions. All right, so when do you use this, or why do you use this? Well, it's intuitive for the client what you're trying to do. You're getting lots of feedback on the effect of those changes. It's easy to get that client involved in the project, very tolerant of learning taking place. in the project and making choices. The challenge is there's no fixed deadline on completion sometimes, and so these projects can stretch out if you're not disciplined in terms of closing out projects. In other words, they could lead on to the project that never ends. All right, well, very good. Look at that. We're at the end of the third of 7 videos where we're looking at specific project management lifecycle models. During this particular video, we talked about Agile project management and specifically the iterative project management lifecycle model. We looked at 6 different approaches, I bet very briefly, to look at different techniques for implementing this specific model. And what we're going to do during the next video is we're going to look at another Agile project management model, which is adaptive. Okay, so that's going to bring us to an end right now. So keep on studying, keep on learning, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.